This video features the installation of our spring-centered street kit with a resurfaced OEM flywheel. However, kits and flywheels are available in different configurations based on the torque being produced at the crankshaft and your style of driving. The installation procedure will be the same except for the disc and flywheel being used. For a complete list of kits and flywheels with their full details and specifications, please visit our website. While this video provides the basics on how to replace a clutch and flywheel, it is in no way intended to replace a factory service manual. Disconnect both the negative and positive battery cables. Unfasten the battery hold down and then remove the battery from the engine compartment. Inside the vehicle, remove the shift knob. Carefully pry up the center console. Disconnect the electrical connectors and remove the center console from the vehicle. Remove the shift boot holder and shift boot. Remove 3 bolts and remove the shift lever and shift lever spring. Unclip and remove the air cleaner housing cover. Loosen the clamp at the throttle body and then undo the clamps securing the hoses to the air intake tube. Remove the hoses connected to the air intake tube and remove the air intake tube and filter assembly from the vehicle. Unfasten and remove the vacuum control solenoid from the air intake box and disconnect the tab securing the wiring. Unfasten and remove the air intake box. Remove the drive belt. Unbolt and disconnect the wire at the rear of the alternator. Disconnect the connector also at the rear of the alternator. Unbolt and remove the alternator from the vehicle. Unfasten the exhaust manifold cover. Unbolt and remove the heat shield, and now remove the exhaust manifold cover. Disengage the two sensors at the rear of the valve cover. Remove the splash guard. Unbolt the upper bolt for the air intake manifold stay. Unbolt the ground wire. Disengage the wire harness from the intake manifold stay. Unbolt the lower bolt for the intake manifold stay, and then remove the intake manifold stay from the vehicle. Disconnect all sensors from the transmission. Unfasten and remove the catalytic converter. Unbolt the exhaust manifold at the top. Unbolt the wire bracket at the bottom, and then remove the exhaust manifold from the vehicle. Remove the 4 shifter boot mounting bolts. Unfasten and remove the slave cylinder from the transmission. Disconnect the release fork by pulling it outward. Wedge a shop towel between the opening in the bell housing and the release fork to hold the release fork in place. Unbolt and remove the drive shaft safety loop. Unfasten and remove the drive shaft. Make sure to mark the drive shaft and the flanges at both the transmission and differential for reinstallation in the same position. Remove the bell housing bolts. Not shown in the video, place a jack or stand under the front subframe. Remove the 2 center mounting bolts and loosen the 4 outer mounting bolts. Unthread the 4 outer mounting bolts approximately 3 inches. Place a jack under the transmission. Lower the front subframe until it touches the 4 outer mounting bolts. Unbolt the transmission crossmember. Making sure everything has been disconnected, disengage the transmission from the engine and slowly lower it to avoid damage to any wiring or hoses. Unbolt and remove the old pressure plate, disc, and release bearing. Unbolt and remove the old flywheel. The ACT offerings for this application are compatible with the OEM flywheel. We do offer flywheels for this application, but they are sold separate from the kits. Not shown in the video, clean any dust, dirt, and grime from the transmission input shaft, guide tube, and the release fork. Lightly coat the disc splines with the lube included in your kit. Lightly coat the pivot surfaces of the release fork with lube. Lightly coat the input shaft splines with lube. Install the disc onto the input shaft and work the lube into the splines. Then remove the disc and wipe off any excess lube from the disc and input shaft to prevent contamination of the clutch disc. Place the release fork in position and wedge a shop towel between the opening of the bell housing and the release fork to hold the release fork in place. Lightly coat the inside of the release bearing with lube. Lightly coat the transmission guide tube with lube and then slide the bearing on to distribute the lube evenly. Wipe off any excess lube from the guide tube and bearing. If you are installing an OEM flywheel, as we are in this case, make sure it has been properly resurfaced. Remove the old bearing and then carefully install the new bearing using a press. Mount the flywheel using new OEM flywheel bolts. Torque the bolts to 94 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Clean the flywheel and pressure plate friction surfaces with a non-petroleum based cleaner. Place the alignment tool through the center of the bearing and then through the disc, creating an alignment tool, release bearing, and disc assembly. Set the alignment tool, release bearing, and disc assembly in position on the flywheel. Place the pressure plate in position over the alignment tool, release bearing, and disc assembly, making sure the dowel pins and bolt holes line up. Install and tighten the pressure plate bolts in a star pattern until they're all snug. Torque the bolts in a star pattern to 24 foot-pounds. Remove the alignment tool. Lift the transmission back into place and support it with a jack. Install the bell housing bolts and torque them to the specified values shown in the graphic. Remove the shop towel between the opening in the bell housing and the release fork and reconnect the release fork by pushing it inward. Make sure it engages the release bearing. Place a small amount of lube into the release fork cup and then install the slave cylinder back into position, tightening the bolt to 16 foot-pounds. Seat the boot back into position. Raise the transmission and install the crossmember bolts. Tighten the bolts to 28 foot-pounds. Install the wire harness and reconnect the sensors to the transmission. Raise the front subframe back into position and tighten the two rear outer mounting bolts until they are snug. Move to the two front outer mounting bolts and tighten them until they are snug. Install the two inner mounting bolts and tighten them till they are snug. Torque the two rear outer mounting bolts to 85 foot-pounds. The two inner mounting bolts to 85 foot-pounds, and the two front mounting bolts to 43 foot-pounds. Aligning the marks made during removal, install the drive shaft and tighten the bolts both at the front and rear to 24 foot-pounds. Bolt the exhaust manifold at the top and tighten the hardware to 24 foot-pounds. Place the catalytic converter back into place. Tighten the nuts at the rear to 25 foot-pounds and the bolts at the front to 16 foot-pounds. Install the oxygen sensor wire bracket back into position at the lower right side of the transmission, then clip the oxygen sensor wire from the catalytic converter into the bracket and finally reconnect the plug together. Install the 4 shifter boot mounting bolts and tighten them to 7 foot-pounds. Install the drive shaft safety loop and tighten the hardware to 16 foot-pounds. Reinstall the ground wire and tighten the hardware. Place the intake manifold bracket back into position. Install the upper mounting bolt and tighten it to 16 foot-pounds. Reconnect the wire harness onto the intake manifold bracket and then install the lower mounting bolt and tighten it to 33 foot-pounds. Install the splash guard. Reconnect the two sensors at the rear of the valve cover. Install the exhaust manifold cover and tighten the hardware to 16 foot-pounds. Set the heat shield in place and tighten the hardware to 7 foot-pounds. Set the alternator in position. Reconnect the plug at the rear of the alternator and reconnect the wire also at the rear of the alternator. Tighten the alternator mounting bolts to 33 foot-pounds. Install the drive belt. Lay the air intake box in position and tighten the hardware. Mount the vacuum control solenoid back onto the air intake box and connect the tab securing the wiring. Place the air intake tube and filter assembly in position, sliding the opening over the throttle body. Connect the hoses to the air intake tube and set the clamps back in their original position. And tighten the clamp at the throttle body. Set the air cleaner housing cover over the air intake box and fasten it with the clips. Place the battery back into position and reconnect the battery cables. Install and tighten the battery hold down. Inside the vehicle, install the shift lever spring and shift lever. Tighten the 3 bolts to 7 foot-pounds. Not shown in the video, install the shift boot and shift boot holder. Plug in the electrical connectors and then install the center console. Install the shift knob lock nut and then install the shift knob. For more information on our products or the parts featured in this video, please visit our website in the description below. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.